Hey, Mudflaps here, back with another video. Today I'm going to go over the Frostworm wing in Naxxramas. Generally, I'm going to go over efficient and reasonable methods for loot distribution. Raids are always trying to improve, and good loot management is a way to do that. Now, remember that it's a team game, and we should all be excited for our teammates and guildies gearing up and strengthening the raid, as when they do better, we all do better. And with that, let's jump into the loot. So I'm actually going to start with the trash because I haven't touched on it in any of the other videos. So we'll do that and then we'll go into the other Frostworm bosses. But that being said, even though this is trash loot, it's far from trash. Many of these items are actually pretty good for people. So Shadow of the Ghoul, it's a very strong piece for Prot Pally and Prot Warrior from mitigation sets. And yeah, Boots of the Escaped Captive, a great piece for Resto Druid. They have a badge option that's close, but I think this is a little better, honestly. And yeah, Shoulder Guards of the Undaunted. This is a great second bis option for Unholy, although, you know, tier comes really quickly. It'll just be a holdover, but it's very good. It's very good. Ousted Bead Necklace. There are so many necks to choose from for casters and healers and everything. I would personally lean towards Disc Priest with this, but lots of people will get value out of this if they need it. Haunting Call. So you have a weapon, and you've got some spirit, which will set it apart for some people, and then you've got a hit. So the big thing about this is the 45 hit. If somebody needs hit in their gearing right now with the weapon, this is good. This is a great piece for them. Like Shadow Priest could use this. I mean, well, any caster that is needing the hit that uses daggers, this is a good holdover piece. Moving on to the big weapons, but it's a good weapon. Silent Crusader. This should go to a Frosty K if they need it. And then possibly after that, Combat Rogue, it's okay for them too. Inevitable Defeat. So we've seen that the meta for Blood Decays is dual wield, but a lot of those things are super contested, and you don't know how many are going to drop. So if this drops, this is really, really good for a Blood Decay. Really, really good. So it should go to them. And enough said about that item. So let's go ahead and go into Sapphiron. Sympathy is a good piece for Resto Druid and Disc Priest. That being said, they both have better options. I know some of the BIS list will say this is Resto Druid BIS. I disagree. The One Drake vestments are better than this. And Disc Priest, obviously, their BIS list has the snow robes from Malygos, but if neither of those have dropped for people, this is great for both. Gloves of Grandeur. Now you have a hit option in the glove slot. Generally, mages, their off piece is going to be gloves, so this could be a great holdover piece for them until they get token. And for anyone else that needs to move their gear around for hit, if they happen to have forset in other spots and leaves their gloves open for the hit option, sure. But most of the other classes, like the Warlocks and Boomkins and everything, they're gonna have their off pieces pants, which leads us to our next item. Leg Wraps of the Defeated Dragon. This is a great hit option for casters, Warlocks especially, right? Because if they transition to Wanton eventually, then they don't have to worry about moving around too much with hit, because this already has a nice chunk of it going into that piece. So these are a great holdover for all of them. It's a really strong piece, honestly. Gloves of Fast Reaction. This is a BOE, so you can sell this. That being said, it can be useful for rogue, combat rogue, or feral, or even warrior if they want it. But they're going to want Frosted Adroit, and they're going to have high prio on that item in most skills, right? So this would just be a weak holdover and probably not very sought after. Leggers of the Boneyard. So this is Resto Druidbus. These should go to Resto Druid immediately. They're great. And then after that, give to Boomkins. So I know the Boomkins want wanton legs, but that's cloth. This is leather. Think about the efficiency argument. Unless the wanton pants are just dropping endlessly, if the clothies want another option, their other option are these leg wraps up here. They're quite strong, but they don't have the Boomkins can use anything, right? And so with the clothies, they're not going to have this as an option if this keeps dropping, right? So just kind of pay attention to what things are dropping and then go from there. And you can adjust and say, let's give our Boomkins some love and give them wonton for people later, but always think about the efficiency. It's not the end-all be-all of how you pass out loot, but it's a great way to combat bad luck, right? You don't want to set yourself up in bad odds because you're passing out cloth to leather wearers, and then when that stops dropping, all there is leather, and you can't give it to anybody. Boots of Great Construct. Enhance, right? So Enhance would like the Malygos ones as well, but these are just as good. And so you can give the Malygos ones to hunters, you give these to Enhance, and if these aren't dropping and the hunters already have Malygos ones, boom, go with Enhance with that. No meta socket. We've memed on the no meta socket helms a lot. There's not much more we could say about them. Shard. Noble Birthright Pauldrons, so only Holy Paladins can use it, but they're gonna have tier. They're gonna have tier quickly. This can be a holdover till then. Breastplate of Frozen Pain. So again, your Ret Paladins and DKs and Warriors, they're gonna go for tier. And this statted a ton of stam on it, strangely enough. So even though it has crit, you could consider a setup where maybe your Blood DK is getting a little greedy for threat and damage, and they could set up something where they're going for some of these off pieces where even though they have DPS aspects to them, they have lots of stam in their plate. Bone Inlaid Leggards. Only Holy Paladins can use them, but they're gonna have tier quickly, so nothing much here. Ceaseless Pity and Cosmic Lights. I'd like to talk about them at the same time here. So there are so many necks and rings and jewelry and just all that stuff in these raids that you don't have to get too much. You don't have to get too crazily involved into where things should go. But if you're gonna do like what I suggest in the Malygos video, and you're giving your casters the Malygos neck first, then you should probably start passing these out to your healers if they want them before DPS, right? Because they're way at the end of the line in the other thing, if you're doing it that way. So, and I think it's a smart way to do it. So I would put healers that want either of these before any DPS, and then after that, throw things around as it's needed, where the love is needed, where people are unlucky. But the neck that you're getting from Malygos is a guarantee every week. So after enough weeks, all your casters are going to have them, and they're not going to ever want these. They're never going to look back at these. So Icy Blast Amulet. This should go to an Assassination Rogue. Fool's Trial should go to other people. Don't give Fool's Trial to an Assassination Rogue. They should go for this, unless this never drops, which could happen. And then all the other people are getting whatever next they want. I know that the Malygos one eventually will be the best for everybody, but until their time comes, that's the best way to do this, in my opinion. Gatekeeper, great tank ring. Obviously, you've got the armor there. Feral Druid would love it, but I don't know how many feral tanks are out there right now. It's great for Blood DK. It's great for all tanks, but it just depends if you don't need the defense. Ring of Decaying Beauty. This is essentially the Worm Rest Band from Sarth. They're like a spell power and 2 haste different. So I would compare these in a prio list as the same item, and then split these up evenly until everyone had one or the other. Bandit's Insignia, it looks like it should be strong, but from all the sims I've seen, this is just a very weak trinket. But if somebody's got a blue for some reason, sure, they can go for it. And as we're seeing now, like hunters don't even want mirror anymore, although most people will have mirror and it's great for them. Maybe a hunter could use this if they don't have greatness in some other thing. Enhance could use it. DK could use it, but again, it's just okay. And this is basically the equivalent for casters. If you guys remember from Magister's Terrace, they had the Timbles, and it was kind of a bad trinket. It didn't do a lot of damage. It wasn't that great of a trinket. This is a slightly better version of that. It's not as bad as Timbles was for the level, but it's still not awesome. It's okay. So while people are waiting for the bigger and better things, this still could be an upgrade for people. So just take a look at, especially the hybrids who might not get as much out of the bigger trinkets. If they need something that's an upgrade from some blue or something, then this is still a decent trinket. So it's not as bad as Timbles. Don't get that too confused. Rune of Repulsion is a good tank item. Your tanks will know you'll know which tanks need what. Go from there. Soul of the Dead, it's a decent healer trinket. Just give it to whoever wants it. There's no headache about this item. Murder, an item that had a lot of potential, but its weapon speed is just kind of meh, right? So technically, it's like in a setup you could get it. It's like 5th Bis as assassination in some setups or something. But if a rogue wants it, it's a little slow for combats offhand. But maybe if they've just had terrible luck, then they could go for it. But again, this is kind of just a meh item. If either rogue wants it, sure. And then for Key to the Focusing Iris, we talked about that in the Malygos video, and I break down some options for that. Now, Kel'Thuzad, the final guy. Now, there are 3 bosses that drop 226 eye level loot. It's Malygos, KT, and Sarth, the 2 Drake version, which is a smaller loot table. And even though Malygos drops same eye level as this guy is basically the end-all, be-all of the loot of the phase because he drops so many weapons, right? So let's take a look at all the crazy stuff this guy drops. Cape of the Unworthy Wizard. This should go to your support demo first, and then Disc Priest, and then after that, consider who you might have lower on Pennant Cloak that uses Spirit, and give this to them after them. And that's a great way to divvy that up. Rape of the Deadly Foe. Now this one might upset some people, I don't know, because if you're following Bissless to the T, and you're like, oh, this is my Biss, yes, but we should look at the big picture, right? This is many people's Biss simply because of eye level, and that the inflation of stats helps them just a little bit more than their second Biss. But this is one of the items that we should probably take a look at it and the second Biss and see how it's statted and how that affects different classes. So in Spider video, I talk about Age Winter Cloak, which is generally the second Biss for a lot of these classes. And we say, give it to MM Hunter, give it to Warrior, give it to Combat Rogue, give it to Feral, and maybe even your Frost DK, because Armor Pen, right? Armor Pen, and not Haste. You've traded out Armor Pen for Haste here. All the people that like Armor Pen don't like Haste. All the people that like Haste don't care about Armor Pen. Works out really, really well. However, you get this massive increase of attack power, so it is barely better for the Armor Pen classes than the Armor Pen Cloak. But don't fall for that, right? The second best for the non-Armor Pen classes is so significantly behind this that this should go to like your Enhance, your Assassination, your Unholy Decay. That's where this should go. And the Aged Winter go to the others until you've got so many of these that you can start passing them out to them as well. If they want it, they might not want it. As you get more Armor Pen, it becomes more powerful. And moving into the next phase, this might lose some of its value in comparison as Armor Pen just starts scaling better and better. Leggings of Mortal Arrogance. Support Demo first. Remember, we're always trying to get Demonic Pact to be as strong as possible. There's no bigger impact that you can do with efficiency of passing out loot than that. And when they get gear, your whole raid wins, right? So you have to see it that way. Now, that is support demo. Just because you have 3 demos doesn't mean you give this to all demos first. You have lots of other options. This is BIS for Disc Priest too. Consider them very highly. I would consider them before personal gain of a demo that's non-support, for sure. But after those 2, then consider the other casters that would like this, because although they would like this, most of them won't want them, right? But you don't know how many of either you're going to get to drop, so you can adapt with that. Boundless Ambition, your tanks, you'll know which one needs what. Easy enough. Signet of Manifested Pain. Now we have a ring that is super contested. Basically the most contested item there is. It covers everything, like the healers, every healer except Resto Druid, every caster DPS, they all could use it. Even your enhanced shaman wants this, right? So don't give it 2 spell hands. But that being said, rings are super plentiful. Like jewelry in this phase, there is so much of it. Don't get too caught up on how big of BIS one thing is for one or the other with something like this. And what I mean is, the other options they have are good. So technically, while this is BIS, this isn't a big impact item like a weapon, a trinket, or one of those bigger pieces, pants or something. Rings are statted a little smaller, generally, and so this is a place where you can be efficient with sharing the love. And what I mean is, you should put healers, especially Holy Pallies, on the same tier as your DPS with this. Consider them equally. Where have people been unlucky? And give it to the person that needs the reward for effort because they've been unlucky. That's the power of Loot Council. I say that so much. It's so true though. You can help fight RNG because you can't control what drops. You can't. So this is a great item to pass out that way. Calamity's Grasp, Combat Rogue, then Enhance. Enhance is a better option, but if it doesn't drop, this is great for them. Sinister Revenge, Assassination Rogue, and then it could be a stat stick for a hunter. Turning Tide, huge item for all of your casters that can use it, which is warlocks and mages, and then Holy Pallies can use it too. This is a place where I would side on giving to your DPS. The impact is so massive for them that you probably should, in most cases, give to DPS first. Now, which one of those? Demo lock first, and then after that, the player over everything else, player over class after that. And then you can work in the Holy Pallies if you think that they deserve it more. Every guild is different, but you're going to get biggest impact for your raid if these casters deserve it in your guild by giving it to them first. But demo first, and then after that, player over class, you'll know who deserves it. Last lap, so your tanks want this, your prot warriors, your prot paladins, your blood DKs, and your DPS DKs wouldn't mind it, right? So that being said, it just depends on where your tank is. Is your tank having problems with anything? Because if they're in a good spot, you can always put your DPS on equal footing with them. It just depends. They have an option from 4 Horsemen. That's a really good threat weapon. That's just barely worse than this. You know, they're not getting crazy amounts out of the white damage out of this. It's about everything else, right? So any of them that's deserving works. It depends on the situation with how geared your tank is. Do they need it? If your tank needs it, you go with tank. If they don't need it, you know, pimp out those DKs, right? Betrayer of Humanity. So, your main two people are your Arms Warrior and your Ret Paladin. Now, depending on the guild, either could use the love based on what your prios are and other things, but if you're talking pure impact, if you want a tiebreaker of some point, I would always side with the Warrior because of what they get out of this. Their specialty with Axe specialty is the most powerful part of this, and their second best option is so far behind this that it would be super inefficient to not give it to them first. Meanwhile, Ret Paladins like Jawbone and other things are really close to this for them, honestly. Their second best options are pretty darn good. So I would not go Ret Paladin first unless your Warrior's just mega geared and he's been getting lucky and your Ret Paladin hasn't been getting anything. Then of course you can adapt as you need. But generally, if all things equal, I go with Warrior. Torch of Holy Fire, the other big time weapon of the phase. Boomkin, Shadow Priest, Disc Priest, Shamans, all would love this. It's the biggest thing they can get. I would put them all equally, and I would reward the player over the class, right? In this one, that is the best way. There is no single factor that makes one class the end-all be-all for this item. And so you should not just say, this class automatically gets it. You should see who needs what based on all your other... You have to look at the big picture of all your priors and then fit this in a way that makes sense. And that you are giving big items in places where people haven't... If they haven't gotten other things, maybe it's time to give them a big item here. If they're not high priored, or even if they are high priored on something else, maybe it's not dropping. This is dropping all the time. You give them this and you change the other prio. You figure it out in a way that makes sense for your guild, player over class. Now this one, mostly class over player. What I mean by that is all your hunters are going to argue that this is their best thing. Sure, it is. But they don't get anything out of it the way a Feral Druid does. So your Feral Druid is getting a crazy amount of attack power out of this and a crazy amount of damage out of this, and it's just a stat stick for your hunters. So if they argue that they should get it over Feral, then maybe you remind them about Envoy, and you say, would it be fair to give this to Rogues and Warriors first over Hunters? Of course not. So Journey's End is the same thing. It's a stat stick for Warriors and Hunters with Envoy. It should go to Hunters first. Journey's End, Ferals first. Then, you're probably not running 3 Ferals, so it's not like they have a long time to wait. You get one, then the door is open. Voice of Reason, equal prio for Shamans and Allies. It's the best shield in the game. They should go for the shield rather than the urn because you can enchant the shield and add more stats to it. You can use a shield, and defensively, you accidentally do something, or a tank messes something up, or a DPS messes, and something's loose. Having a shield, you're no longer going to be one shot by most things. It's you can't actually just not account for that. Wall of Terror, main tank, and then that brings us to the Tier Helm. So, in all the other videos, I talk about Tier Helm in a way where I talk about Tier in a way where it comes so quick. Eventually, you're not going to be talking about it, especially because you can buy them. You have so many avenues to get Tier, except Helm. So Helm you can get in 2 avenues, 25 and 10, but you can't buy it with badges. So anyone who uses this as their part of their 4-piece, they are kind of at the mercy of getting this before they can use their off-piece. So for me, as long as this is part of their BIS setup and they use it for the rest of the phase, then my tiebreaker for the people who use it is, do they have an off-piece that they can't use until they get this? Well then, them, right? That, or it makes their 4-piece, but making their 4-piece should not be a thing anymore because people can buy it. They can buy all of it. By the 3rd week, you've been able to buy everything. So, unless they're just not doing 10-mans, which that's something else, right? But so I know it could seem like, wow, this person's getting a lot of loot. They got the big off piece, and now they're going to get helm too. Well, yeah, sometimes you have to combo loot like that, but you can change prios in other places to adapt where maybe other people didn't get the combo, and they get something big. Also, you know, there are plenty of ways to make things fair. Everyone's getting lots of things, but you should combo this with people who have their bis off piece. That's a great way to do this, right? And just a real quick go over who actually uses these. Holy Pally doesn't, right? This is not part of their setup for their bis. Ret can, but it depends on your guild. Where do you have a lot of things? They can go for just like a warrior, they can go for a helm off piece, they can go for a glove off piece, they can go for pants off piece. It just depends on what they're doing. I would say for Ret, pants or gloves are probably a better option usually, but it depends on what drops. So they may go for this if they go for pants or gloves, but if they're going for the helm off SAR 3D, then you don't give them this. Simple enough. Prop paladins generally go for this. They're off piece in the perfect setup, but there are many setups, you know, don't get me wrong, is the pants off piece. Disc and Shadow do not use it. Demo and AF use it. If you are going to prio beyond the scope of what I said earlier, obviously Demo first, because getting them as set up as possible impacts your raid in the biggest manner imaginable, okay? So both of them use it. If you're really going to min-max, then Demo first. After that, the other aspects I discussed. For Protector, just like Red, if they are going for the Sarth Helm in your guild, they don't go for this. But if they're going for the other things, then they're going to need this piece, the DPS warriors. Prot warriors would go for this. Hunters is a weird one because generally they go for this for the 2-piece. It's supposed to barely edge out going for the better helm from Malygos. That being said, it's such a small thing for them. If the Malygos helm is dropping all the time, just give them that and wait on this and give it to other people. So I would monitor that situation before I just give this to a hunter. Resto Shaman goes for it, Ellie Shaman goes for it, Enhance goes for the Malygos helm that hunters also like. Valorous Bone Scythe Helmet. Rogues go for this. Frost goes for this. But Unholy doesn't. Blood goes for it. Mage goes for it. Resto Druid doesn't. Boomkin does. And Feral does. Alright, let's take a look at the 10-man loot. So unlike some of the other wings, the 10-man loot in this is going to be a little different for KT, especially because he has higher eye level, so it'll be almost like 25-man loot. But real quick, I'll just touch on a few things here. For Sapphiron, you have the neck again. It's just a weaker version of the same thing of the Malygos 25 version, so it's usually a decent item for people. And then of these, one thing to point out is the Circle of Death. This is Mega Bis for DKs because they get strength, especially Unholy. They get so much from strength. So does Rat, and then Warriors obviously could use it too. So even though it's a lower eye level item from 10-man, because it's one of only 2 strength rings, this is actually Mega Bis for some people. So nothing to sleep on. If this drops in a 10-man, please let an Unholy have it. They're going to get way more than everyone else. Think about that. Then for KT, things to discuss. Death's Bite is like basically the second bis weapon for warriors. Hammer of the Astral Plane is the second best, well, third best one-hander for holy paladins. And Wand of the Archlich is actually the best wand in the phase, unless you need hit. Then you go with Nerubian. And then the 10-man helms. These are going to be sought after for a while because people need that helm to finish off their 4 sets so they can use their other pieces. So this is going to be something people go for a while, right? And with that is the Frostworm wing. So as an aside, to discuss a little bit of like WoW philosophy, as we've just talked about loot decisions for guilds and great ways to do that. This list can set people up for failure, right? It may give you expectations that are not reasonable, and you should really temper your expectations for things that are reasonable, or you're not gonna have a good time. It is reasonable to go for Abyss. That is fun. It's not likely for many people though. RNG is crazy. You have to extreme luck or buy your way to it. Usually, very few people get full Abyss in a phase. So, that being said, in our guild in Classic, we did 7 months of Naxx, and there were multiple items we saw 0 times. Not enough to give to everybody that needed their Abyss. We never gave it to anyone because it never dropped, right? So some things dropped all the time, then everyone got that. That's just the nature of the game, right? So don't let false expectations and loot obsession rule your experience. I implore everyone to take a moment and think about the aspects of raiding that they find fun, and always consider these in tandem. Sure, there's getting that dopamine hit from getting the loot that you were rewarded with because you earned it, but think about playing with friends, going for achievements, parsing in non-toxic manners, and things that we like to do, like improve as a group, improve as a unit. People love improving every week. Now, you're gonna have bad weeks. Guilds have bad weeks, but you recover and you keep moving forward and you do better. The loot should be a system to do better as a unit. Consider these aspects when raiding, right? The big thing is don't let loot obsession rule your experience, right? That's my best advice for staying happy and having fun with your friends in this team game. And on that note, I hope this all was helpful. Keep an eye out for future videos. Like and subscribe, it helps me out. And with that, I'll see you on the next one.